Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful.
So last week we spoke about Jonathan, and this week, I think if you can't see the screen, just to recap on where we went through. So we've gone through the introduction of the book of Maccabees. Then we spoke about Judas, Maccabees, and the military might. Then we did Jonathan, and now we are doing Simon and organization skills. So last week he covered a bit, or not a bit, but most of Jonathan's history. So in this week, we are going to delve much more into Simon and the organization skills. And I'll just take you through in just a brief about it in terms of what we are going to cover, and then we just go into discussion. Uh, One of the differences between this book and the other books is that there's a lot of naming differences because it's almost based in a time that to the African tongue or the like American tongue, the names don't sound familiar. It almost sounds like it's a foreign place where this was all taking place. But when you look at the culture and the mannerisms of the people, there are some things you can identify that this was being done in an environment that is familiar to us, even though the names are not familiar to us. But you can see snippets and tidbits of where this was occurring, and you can start to piece things together and understand how this plays a bigger part into just the history even of just the Old Testament. But more importantly, I just try to think of it in terms of when you look at this, how do you relate it to the teaching people, or how do you relate it to awakening people, or how do you relate these lessons that we learn from this to giving people guidance for a better or a much better living as compared to the well done Christian life or what they've known before. So, what are the lessons that we can draw from these books that we are learning to help people in the future, to help people in the present, and also to help people who are awakening at the same time, and what lessons they can draw out from this together? So, I'm just gonna go through them bit by bit. I guess most of you have read what Maccabees or in terms of Simon, what happened, but I'll just go through the topics. Then I'll play like a summary of what I understood, and then perhaps you guys can join in and just give their lessons in terms of what they perceive to be some of the lessons they've learned. So the first thing we see in this lessons for this week is that now Simon comes in as the new leader. And then there is, of course, with Simon coming in, there are the enemies that were there before. So Simon fights off Tryphon, who had killed Jonathan, and goes ahead and buries Jonathan. And then there's the Demetrius, and then he grants the privileges to the Jews, aka to Isolele, and Simon takes over Gaza. And then we see now taking the leadership role of Simon in terms of Jerusalem in the city. So not only do we see Simon just taking over leadership of the people, he's also taking leadership of the land. So there are two different aspects there that need to come out, because it's almost like you cannot lead the people if you're not leading the land. And that's why, even I think when you look at the story of Moses, Moses brought out the nation, in order to take them to the land so that they can know how to live in the land. So you kind of see the same, again, a theme that's been repeated throughout. And then we see how Simon renews alliances with the Romans, and why it's important to seek an avenue of peace in terms of just the smart moves that he does in order to keep the stability. And I think he might have had reasons, because also these people were tired of war and also being suppressed for a long time. And you can see how that is also reminiscent of when Joseph had just come back from burying Jacob. The children of Esau also went to attack Joseph. And we see it as a common theme. And when they were beaten, there was a period of peace, and Joseph also had some alliances with some people, I think from Africa, the king of Angiers and things like that. And you can see they wanted to keep the peace with the children of Jacob, because they knew that they were also under the protection of the Most High. So you see these alliances were not just alliances because of fear, but they were alliances because the other party also knew that these people had the backing of the Most High. And now you see the laws or deeds and things being brought up through Simon. And I think this is why we see normally structures coming up in terms of just leadership structures. And it's important to note, like, even when we speak of Simon, we also see the leadership structures that were brought out by Jethro. It's another leadership structure. When Jethro told Moses, you cannot do this, appoint rulers of the tribe so that they can also instruct the people. So you're seeing the deeds, the honors, and duties similar to how we know the Most High has a system of doing things and an order of doing things. Then now we go and see Antiochus confirm Simon's rights. Uh, then Antiochus besieges Typhon, and we again then see this invasion of Judea, and then Simon again defeats a very long-term enemy, and then a very interesting betrayal happens. Ptolemy murders Simon, and we look at times how this can be, and we notice that in the midst of success, treacherousness is always present. People, the devil is more closer to you when you're successful, so that he can cut off your limbs. He's like ripening, like a fruit that's ripened from the tree. He's eager to just cut you off, just for you to make a mistake and for you to believe. And it makes me just to think back when they were building, I think, the walls of Jericho, and they would build with one hand holding the weapons and the other hand on the wall. And when you hear people say watch and pray, it's not that they are saying it wrongly, it's because the enemy lacks all the time. So it's most of the time your guard is down when you're in success, because you have a joyous and success has been breeding. So you tend to miss out a lot and you're not as cautious as before. So it's a lesson also to draw out in terms of uh, the pitfalls that come with being successful is not necessarily not to lower your guard down, but to also look at things keenly, because some of the people who might be wishing you doom and gloom are the same people who are around. And even with this awakening, we tend to see that even with the people who've branched off and done all different things, it's when you are successful, when you start reaching out people. And that's how stardom starts to get people affected, because now they get into fame, and then all of a sudden it gets into you, and you miss out the point. And that is also something we can draw lessons from Simon. And in as much as he was successful and he took over Jonathan's role, treachery between people is something that you always have to watch out for, because not everybody is happy when you have when you succeed and God is with you. That's just something I picked out from. So I'm just gonna play the audio, and then from there, in case you have something else to add, we can go through the books. But I think the lessons that you have learned can draw more in terms of learning as just reading the book. Because there are lessons you learn and you go back and read the book and say, this is something that I think is an important tool. So let's play the audio.
The summary of Book of Maccabees for our last lesson, starting with chapter 9, Conflict and Loss. The summary of Book of Maccabees for our last lesson, starting with chapter 9, Conflict and Loss. Jonathan, the brother of Judas Maccabeus, steps up as the leader after Judas is killed in battle. The enemies, led by Maccabees, continue to pressure Israel. Jonathan's leadership. Despite heavy opposition, Jonathan gathers the remnants of the Jewish army and leads them in battle. Spiritual lesson. Perseverance in the face of adversity is crucial. Jonathan's leadership shows the importance of rising to the challenge when all seems lost. Faith in God sustains them. Chapter 10. Diplomatic moves. Jonathan plays a key diplomatic role, navigating between rival foreign powers, Demetrius and Alexander Ballas, who both seek his support. Victory and honor. Jonathan earns a royal appointment as high priest and receives greater favor from King Alexander. Spiritual lesson. Wisdom and discernment in leadership can turn enemies into allies. God blesses those who seek peace and remain steadfast in their devotion. Chapter 11. Further diplomacy. Jonathan's influence grows, and he continues to balance relations between different rulers. Unsteady alliances. The political landscape shifts as Demetrius II rises, and Jonathan continues to be a key player in preserving Jewish independence. Spiritual lesson. Patience and integrity in decision-making help navigate difficult relationships. Trust in God's guidance to maintain peace amid shifting allegiances. Chapter 12. Building alliances. Jonathan strengthens ties with Sparta and Rome to protect the Jewish people. Betrayal and captivity. Jonathan is betrayed by Trypho, a rival, and taken captive. Spiritual lesson. Even in betrayal, faith must remain strong. Jonathan's capture reminds us to be vigilant and trust God when others turn against us. Chapter 13. Simon's leadership. After Jonathan is captured, Simon takes over leadership of the Jewish people. He fortifies their defenses and secures victories against their enemies. Independence established. Under Simon, the Jews gain full independence from foreign rulers and control Jerusalem. Spiritual lesson. Simon's leadership highlights the value of strong, righteous leadership. Through faith and unity, the Jewish people secure their freedom. Chapter 14. Simon's achievements. Simon's leadership brings peace and prosperity to Israel. The people honor him for his devotion and success in reestablishing Jewish rule. Spiritual lesson. Faithful leadership brings blessings of peace and stability. God rewards those who lead with integrity and devotion to his will. Chapter 15. Rome's support. Simon's diplomacy wins the favor of the Roman Senate, securing alliances to safeguard Israel. Spiritual lesson. Maintaining strong relationships with allies shows the importance of unity and cooperation. God works through strategic alliances for the benefit of his people. Chapter 16, 1-25. Simon's betrayal and death. Simon is tragically betrayed by his son-in-law Ptolemy and killed. His son John Hyrcanus takes over leadership. Spiritual lesson. Even in times of success, treachery may arise. We must remain vigilant. trusting God to overcome betrayal and ensure justice prevails. Key spiritual lessons: perseverance and faith. The Maccabees faced continuous adversity, yet their unwavering faith in God allowed them to persevere through overwhelming odds. God's people must remain steadfast, even when the path is difficult. Leadership and responsibility. Jonathan and Simon exemplify the qualities of godly leadership: bravery, wisdom, and humility. Leaders must be prepared to sacrifice for their people while placing their trust in God's provision. Unity and loyalty. Throughout these chapters, internal unity was vital for the Jewish people's survival. The importance of loyalty, both to God and to one another, is a reminder that divided houses fall. Trusting God in diplomacy. Jonathan's diplomacy, navigating between rival kings, shows the importance of seeking God's guidance in difficult decisions. Success comes when we honor God's principles in every aspect of life. The consequences of betrayal. Despite the eventual victories, betrayal struck from within. This teaches the importance of vigilance and faithfulness, knowing that God is just and will ultimately restore the righteous. The story in God and the pursuit of justice. Through the trials and victories, the central message is clear. Faith in God provides the strength to overcome any challenge.
So I hope you guys got, I don't know if it played too fast or was it too slow, but I hope it was a good summary. In a few words, that's what I picked up and I could draw from. So I will stop sharing my screen now. And now I invite, it's all open for your contributions.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful.